What if a simple game could quietly reveal the cracks in your marriage? Ethan never thought a Friday night at a bowling alley would stay in his memory forever. It was supposed to be light and fun. Claire had suggested it earlier that week, saying they both needed a break from work and routine. She also invited her mother, Linda. "It'll be good for her," Claire said. "She's been alone too much lately." Ethan agreed without thinking twice. He liked Linda. She was calm, thoughtful, and easy to talk to. Sometimes, lately, easier to talk to than Claire. Maplewood Bowling Alley was buzzing when they arrived. Neon lights glowed across polished floors. Pop music played overhead. Teenagers crowded the arcade machines. The smell of pizza and popcorn filled the air. It felt alive. Warm. Normal. Ethan hoped the energy would rub off on them. Claire looked beautiful that night. She wore a red sweater that made her eyes shine under the lights. Linda wore a soft blue cardigan and smiled as she watched families laugh around them. For a moment, everything felt steady. They ordered sodas. They joked about who would lose first. Ethan felt a small spark of the life they used to have. The first round was playful. Claire teased Ethan when he rolled a gutter ball. Linda clapped loudly when Claire scored a strike. Ethan laughed more than he had in weeks. He noticed how Claire's laughter used to fill a room. Tonight, though, it sounded slightly forced, like she was trying to convince herself she was happy. Halfway through the second game, Claire's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen quickly. Her smile faded. "I need to take this," she said, stepping away toward the hallway near the restrooms. Ethan watched her go. Something in his chest tightened, though he didn't know why. It was just a phone call. Nothing unusual. But she stayed there longer than expected. He could see her through the glass door. She turned her back slightly, lowering her voice. She wasn't laughing anymore. Linda noticed too. She rolled the ball gently but didn't release it. "She's been busy lately," she said softly. "Eyes still on Claire. Work's been crazy," Ethan replied, trying to sound casual, but deep down, he knew work wasn't the only reason. Claire returned after almost 10 minutes. Her face was calm, but distant. She picked up the ball and bowled without a word. No teasing. No laughter. Just silence. Ethan tried to lighten the mood. "You're losing your lucky streak," he joked. She forced a smile. "Guess I'm off tonight." Linda's eyes moved between them. She didn't speak, but she felt the shift in the air. It was subtle, like a temperature drop you only notice when it's already too late. The game ended quietly. Claire checked her phone twice more before they left. Ethan pretended not to see. In the parking lot, cold air hit their faces. Ethan offered to drive. Claire nodded and slid into the passenger seat. Linda sat in the back. The radio played softly, but no one sang along like they used to. Halfway home, Claire broke the silence. "I might need to go to Toronto next week." "For work?" Ethan blinked. "Next week? That's sudden." "It just came up," she replied quickly. "It's important." He nodded slowly. "How long?" "A few days." Linda leaned forward slightly. "Is everything okay, sweetheart?" Claire hesitated for a second too long. "Yeah. Just work stuff." Ethan noticed the pause. It was small. But it felt loud. When they reached the house, Claire went inside first. She said she had emails to send. Ethan stayed outside for a moment, staring at the dark sky. Something didn't sit right. It wasn't anger. It wasn't jealousy. It was confusion. Like he had missed a chapter in his own story. Linda stepped beside him quietly. "Marriage can get heavy," she said gently. "Sometimes people don't know how to say what they're feeling." Ethan looked at her. "Do you think she's unhappy?" Linda didn't answer right away. She chose her words carefully. "I think she's searching for something." The words echoed in his mind. Inside the house, Claire sat at the kitchen table, staring at her phone. Her face softened when a new message appeared. She typed quickly. Then she locked the screen as Ethan walked in. "You okay?" he asked. "Just tired," she said. They went to bed without talking much. Ethan lay awake long after Claire's breathing became steady. He stared at the ceiling, replaying the night in his mind. The call. The sudden trip. The silence. He remembered when bowling nights used to mean something different. When they would hold hands between turns. When they would compete playfully and celebrate small wins with quick hugs. Tonight, there had been space between them. Not physical distance. Emotional distance. Beside him, Claire shifted slightly, turning away. Ethan felt it, that quiet space growing wider, and he didn't know how to close it. Down the hall, Linda stood in the guest room window, looking out at the street lights. She had seen this kind of distance before. She had lived it. The quiet drift. The unspoken words. The search for attention outside a marriage when it no longer felt warm inside. She hoped she was wrong, but something about that phone call, about the way Claire's voice changed, made her heart uneasy. Back in the bedroom, Ethan finally closed his eyes, but sleep didn't come easily. A simple bowling night had uncovered something fragile. Something they had both ignored, and as the house fell silent, one truth settled heavily in the dark. Sometimes the moment you think is harmless is the moment everything begins to shift, and none of them were ready for what that shift would bring next. How far can a heart travel before it forgets where it belongs? Claire left for Toronto 3 days after the bowling night. The morning felt rushed and strangely quiet. Ethan helped carry her suitcase to the car. She moved quickly, avoiding long eye contact. When he hugged her goodbye at the airport, she held him for only a second before stepping back. "It's just a work trip," she said with a small smile. "I'll call you tonight." Ethan nodded, but something inside him felt unsettled. He watched her disappear into the crowd. The automatic doors closed behind her, and the space beside him felt colder than it should have. The house felt too quiet that evening. No music playing from the kitchen. No soft humming while Claire cooked. Ethan tried to distract himself with television, but his mind kept replaying the bowling night. The phone call. The distance. The pause before answering simple questions. Around 7, there was a knock at the door. Linda stood outside holding a covered dish. "Thought you shouldn't eat alone," she said gently. Ethan managed a smile and let her in. They sat at the kitchen table. Linda poured tea while Ethan picked at his food. The silence wasn't awkward. It was calm. "Safe," she called. "Yet?" Linda asked carefully. "Not yet," Ethan replied, glancing at his phone on the table. Linda studied his face. "You can talk to me, Ethan." He hesitated. He didn't want to sound insecure. But the words slipped out. "She feels different. Like she's somewhere else lately." Linda folded her hands. "Sometimes when people feel lost, they don't know how to explain it. So they pull away." "Lost?" he repeated quietly. She didn't answer directly. Instead, she asked, "When was the last time you two had a real conversation? Not about bills or work. About feelings?" Ethan couldn't remember. That realization hurt more than he expected. Later that night, his phone buzzed. A message from Claire. "Busy evening. Meetings ran late. Talk tomorrow?" He stared at the short sentence. No heart emoji. No miss you. Just simple words. "Of course," he typed back, but sleep didn't come easily. The next morning, Ethan opened social media while drinking coffee. He wasn't searching for anything. He was just scrolling. Then he saw it. A photo posted by someone tagged at a rooftop restaurant in downtown Toronto. Claire was in it. She wasn't in a conference room. She wasn't holding a folder or standing near coworkers. She was dressed casually, smiling at the camera. And standing beside her was a man Ethan had never seen before. They weren't touching. But they stood close. Comfortable. The caption read, "Great night after the meetings." Ethan's chest tightened. His hands went cold. He clicked on the man's profile. Mark Henderson. Marketing consultant. Based in Toronto. His heart beat faster. He wanted to believe it was innocent. Just coworkers. Just networking. But why hadn't she mentioned dinner? Why didn't she call like she promised? He stared at the photo until his vision blurred. The knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Linda stepped in, noticing his pale face immediately. What's wrong? She asked. He didn't speak. He simply turned his phone toward her. Linda's expression changed slowly. First confusion. Then concern. Then something heavier. I didn't know she was meeting someone, she said softly. Neither did I, Ethan replied, his voice tight. They stood in silence. Linda finally said, let's not assume the worst. But even she didn't sound fully convinced. That afternoon, Claire texted again. Long day. Going out with colleagues. Don't wait up. Ethan looked at the message, then back at the photo. The same rooftop. The same outfit. Something inside him cracked. That evening, he called her instead of texting. She answered after 3 rings. Music played faintly in the background. Hey, she said, slightly out of breath. Are you with coworkers? He asked calmly. Yes, she replied quickly. Is Mark there? There was a pause, just 1 second, but it felt endless. Yeah, she admitted. He's part of the project. Ethan swallowed. You didn't mention him. It's not a big deal, she said. You're overthinking. The words stung. I saw the photo, he said quietly. Silence filled the line. Then Claire sighed. It was just dinner. We're all here. All? He asked. Another pause. His heart sank. Ethan, she said softly, please don't make this into something. But it already was something. He didn't yell. He didn't accuse. He simply said, I just want honesty. Her voice softened. We'll talk when I get back. The call ended. Ethan lowered the phone slowly. Linda watched from across the room. She could see the pain in his eyes. I should have seen this coming, she whispered. He looked up sharply. What do you mean? Linda hesitated. Claire mentioned someone she was talking to at work a few months ago. She said he understood her ideas. That he listened. Ethan felt the ground shift beneath him. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't think it was serious, Linda said. I thought it was harmless. But now, harmless didn't feel like the right word. That night, Ethan sat alone in the living room. The house felt different. Not empty, but uncertain. His phone remained silent. He replayed small moments from the past few months. The late nights. The quiet dinners. The way Claire had seemed distracted even when he was speaking. He realized something painful. He had noticed the drift, but he had ignored it, and now, someone else might be standing in the space he once filled. Upstairs, Linda sat on the edge of the guest bed, staring at the ceiling. She loved her daughter deeply. But she also cared for Ethan. She didn't want either of them hurt. She knew emotional distance could be dangerous, and she feared this was no longer just about work. Miles away in Toronto, Claire stood on a balcony overlooking the city lights. Mark stood beside her, speaking softly about future projects and opportunities. She listened, but her mind wasn't fully present. Her phone rested in her hand. She thought about Ethan's voice, the disappointment, the quiet hurt. For a moment, doubt flickered in her chest, but she didn't step away. And as the city lights shimmered below her, 3 hearts in 3 different places felt the same thing. Something fragile was breaking, and none of them knew how to stop it. What hurts more, the mistake itself, or the moment you finally say it out loud? Claire returned from Toronto on a quiet Sunday afternoon. The sky was gray again, like the night of the bowling game. Ethan stood in the kitchen when he heard her suitcase wheels roll across the front porch. His heart pounded, but his face stayed calm. She stepped inside slowly. Hi, she said softly. Hi, he replied. No hug. No warm welcome. Just space. Linda was there too. She had come earlier, saying she wanted to be around just in case. She watched carefully from the living room, sensing that something important was about to unfold. Claire set her suitcase down and looked at Ethan. Can we talk? He nodded. They sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the same place where they had shared so many normal nights. Now it felt like a courtroom. Ethan didn't raise his voice. He didn't accuse. He simply asked, is there something you haven't told me? Claire's hands trembled slightly. She stared at the table before meeting his eyes. Yes. The word hung heavy in the air. I've been talking to Mark for months, she admitted. It started at work. We worked on a project together. He listened. He noticed things about me that I felt you didn't see anymore. Ethan's chest tightened, but he stayed quiet. It became emotional, she continued. We texted. We shared things. I felt understood. Did it become more than that? Ethan asked carefully. She shook her head quickly. No. It didn't cross that line. But I know it was still wrong. The honesty hit harder than denial would have. Linda stepped into the kitchen, unable to stay silent any longer. Why didn't you tell him you were unhappy? She asked gently. Claire's eyes filled with tears. Because I didn't know how. I didn't want to hurt him. And I didn't want to admit I was lonely. Ethan leaned back in his chair, trying to steady his breathing. You think I wasn't lonely too? He asked quietly. That question broke something open. Claire looked up, surprised. You were? Yes, he said. But I thought it was just a phase. I thought we'd fix it. They sat there, facing the truth neither of them had wanted to see. It wasn't just about another man. It was about months of silence. Missed chances. Small walls built day by day. Linda pulled out a chair and joined them. Loneliness inside a marriage can be dangerous, she said softly. It makes you search for comfort in the wrong places. Claire wiped her tears. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Ethan's voice lowered. Did you think about leaving? The question froze the room. Claire hesitated. Then nodded slightly. For a moment. I felt alive when I talked to him. Like someone was excited about me again. Ethan felt the sting of those words. But instead of anger, he felt sadness. I used to be excited about you, he said. I just didn't know you needed more. The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was heavy with realization. Linda stood and walked toward the window, giving them space. She knew this moment belonged to them. Claire reached across the table slowly. I ended it, she said. Before I came home. I told him it was wrong. I blocked his number. Ethan searched her face for doubt. For hesitation. He saw none. Only regret. Why? He asked. Because I don't want to lose us, she replied. I don't want to throw away years over a season of weakness. The word weakness echoed in the room. Ethan stood up and walked toward the sink, trying to clear his head. He stared out the window, thinking of the bowling night. The phone call. The photo. The growing distance. He realized something painful. The affair hadn't started in Toronto. It had started at home. In silence. He turned back toward her. If we try again, he said slowly, it can't be like before. No more silence. No more pretending. Claire nodded quickly. I agree. Linda turned around, relief in her eyes. But she knew this wasn't solved yet. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight. Are you willing to work for it? Ethan asked. Yes, Claire whispered. Are you ready to be honest, even when it's uncomfortable? Yes. Ethan stepped closer. Then tell me everything. Not to hurt me. But so there are no more secrets. Claire took a deep breath and told him the full story. How Mark first complimented her presentation. How their conversation slowly shifted from professional to personal. How she felt noticed in a way she hadn't in months. How she confused attention with connection. As she spoke, Ethan felt waves of pain. But he also saw something else. Clarity. This wasn't about passion or excitement. It was about neglect. Emotional distance. Two people drifting without realizing it. When she finished, the room was quiet again. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. I'm hurt, he admitted. But I'm also not innocent. I stopped trying too. Claire shook her head. You didn't betray me. No, he said softly. But I stopped showing up fully. Linda finally spoke. This is the first real conversation you've had in months. They both knew she was right. For the first time in a long time, they weren't pretending. That night, they didn't magically fix everything. They didn't suddenly feel normal again. But something shifted. Not apart. Together. Later, When Claire went upstairs, Ethan remained in the kitchen with Linda. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I should have spoken sooner." He shook his head. "This isn't on you." She looked at him carefully. "What will you do now?" Ethan stared at the empty chairs around the table. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I don't want our story to end because we were too afraid to talk." Upstairs, Claire stood alone in the bedroom. She looked at the wedding photo on the dresser. Two younger versions of themselves smiling with hope. She touched the frame gently. She almost lost that. And downstairs, Ethan made a silent decision. He wasn't ready to walk away, but forgiveness would take time, and the real test wasn't whether they could survive the truth. It was whether they could rebuild something stronger than what they had before, because now that everything was exposed, there was no hiding anymore, only choice. And tomorrow, they would have to choose each other again. Can a marriage survive the truth and still find its way back to love? The house felt different after that long night of honesty. Nothing had magically healed, but the silence that once filled the rooms was gone. In its place was something fragile but real: awareness. Ethan and Claire both understood that if they wanted to stay together, they would have to rebuild everything slowly. The next morning, Ethan woke up before Claire. He stood in the kitchen making coffee, thinking about the life they had built. The early years of laughter. The road trips. The late-night talks about dreams. Somewhere along the way, they had stopped sharing those moments. They had allowed work, stress, and routine to replace effort. Claire walked in quietly, her eyes tired but determined. "Good morning," she said softly. "Morning," Ethan replied. There was an awkward pause. Then Claire spoke first. "I meant what I said. I ended it completely. I'll show you whatever you need to see." Ethan looked at her carefully. "I don't want to police you. I want to trust you." She nodded. "Then let's rebuild that." That day, they made a simple plan. No grand promises. Just small steps. Weekly date nights. Honest check-ins. No phones during dinner. It sounded basic, but they both knew consistency mattered more than dramatic gestures. Linda watched the change with cautious hope. She didn't interfere, but she remained present. She invited them over for Sunday dinner again, just like before the tension started. But this time, the conversations were deeper. One evening at Linda's house, she placed 3 plates on the table and looked at them both. "Marriage isn't about never feeling tempted or lonely," she said gently. "It's about what you do when you feel that way." Claire lowered her gaze. Ethan squeezed her hand under the table. "I made a mistake," Claire said firmly. "But I don't want to run when things feel hard." Ethan nodded. "And I don't want to ignore problems until they grow." Linda smiled softly. "Then you're already stronger than before." The weeks that followed weren't easy. Some days felt hopeful. Other days felt heavy. There were moments when Ethan's mind replayed the photo from Toronto. Moments when doubt whispered in his ear. But instead of staying silent, he spoke. "Today was hard," he admitted one night. Claire didn't get defensive. She moved closer. "What are you feeling?" "That I'm scared it could happen again." She answered honestly. "It won't. Because now I know what I almost lost." They began therapy together. It wasn't dramatic. It was structured. They learned how to listen without interrupting. How to express needs without blame. How to rebuild connection intentionally. One evening, after a long session, Ethan suggested something unexpected. "Let's go back to the bowling alley." Claire blinked in surprise. "Really?" "Yes," he said. "That's where things started to fall apart. Maybe it's where we can start again." The following Friday, they walked into Maplewood Bowling Alley once more. The neon lights were the same. The music was just as loud. But this time, they stood closer. Claire looked nervous. "What if it feels awkward?" "Then we laugh at ourselves," Ethan replied. They laced up their bowling shoes and stepped onto the lane. The first roll was clumsy. The second was better. By the third, Claire laughed genuinely for the first time in weeks. Ethan noticed the difference immediately. During a break, she turned to him. "I forgot how much fun we used to have." "We forgot to protect it," he said gently. She nodded. As the game went on, something shifted. Not perfectly. Not magically. But steadily. They talked about their fears openly. They talked about their dreams again. Claire admitted she had felt unseen. Ethan admitted he had felt pressure to provide but forgot to connect. Neither blamed the other. They owned their part. Across town, Linda sat by her living room window, thinking about her own past. She remembered the silence that had destroyed her marriage years ago. The pride that kept her from speaking up. The loneliness that grew because no one reached out. She was grateful her daughter and son-in-law had chosen differently. Back at the bowling alley, Ethan rolled a strike. Claire cheered loudly and hugged him without hesitation. It wasn't dramatic or romantic in a flashy way. It was simple. Honest. Real. Later, as they sat with shared fries and sodas, Claire looked at him seriously. "Thank you for not walking away." He met her eyes. "Thank you for telling the truth." The air between them felt lighter. On the drive home, Claire rested her hand on his arm. "I don't want to lose us again," she said quietly. "We won't," he replied. "Not if we keep choosing each other." When they pulled into the driveway, the house no longer felt cold or uncertain. It felt like a place worth fighting for. Inside, Claire placed her phone on the counter and turned it face down. Not because she had something to hide, but because she wanted to be fully present. Ethan noticed small actions. Big meaning. Before bed, they stood by the window together. The same gray sky from weeks ago now looked calm instead of heavy. "Do you regret telling me?" Ethan asked softly. Claire shook her head. "No. I regret what I did. But not the honesty." He nodded. Trust would take time. Healing would take patience. But the foundation was stronger now because it was built on truth. That night, they lay side by side, not separated by distance but connected by intention. The bowling night had revealed the cracks. The truth had shaken them. But the choice to stay, to work, to forgive, that was what changed everything. And as the house settled into quiet peace, one simple truth remained clear. Love doesn't survive because it's perfect. It survives because two people decide, again and again, that it's worth saving.